Thanks for tuning in to my official YouTube channel, Reverend MeeLing. I'm also known as Reverend Susan MeeLing, Lady MeeLing, Lady Dori Belle. Few names by a lot. So this is part 2 of the aspects in reference to what occurred because of the individuals at McCoy Elementary School of Carrollton Farmers Branch Independent School District of Carrollton, Texas, off of McCoy Road in Carrollton, Texas. And I'm doing everything I can right now to maintain my pain levels, because similarly to after having gone scuba diving at the Vandenberg out off of the Florida Keys, when I had surfaced from the bottom of the Matthias Abyss, my stomach was churning very similarly to the way my stomach was churning today. And I tried to calm my stomach down by drinking some juice the exact same way that I had when I surfaced from the bottom of the ocean. That was given to me at that time by the dive master. However, I have some juice in my apartment. And so the only way that I could calm my stomach down is, ironically, as close to a combination as to what I had in my car when I went to go back to the hotel that day by making my own tea with coffee mixture, because that was literally the only way I could calm my stomach down and not start dry heaving. So not to gross you out, but, you know, just pointing out the reality of that. That is what it is. I know that there are certain individuals who don't want to accept certain things. However, that is a realistic thing for me. I'm not the only one. I know that. However, that is a very important aspect, because, you know, I have to do what I can to control myself, and I have to do what's needed for myself to remain under control. So that way there aren't any eruptions anywhere. You know, safety. That is important. I mean, I know that there are apparently at this point in time some individuals who don't mind their cities and states burning. However, there are different types of, you know, burnings that can occur in reference to if I don't have a lower pain level. How I have to do it. So, you know, I understand that there's a general consensus in various ways. However, then there are other aspects where, you know, again, who do you know who has landed at the bottom of the ocean in the Matthias Abyss and surfaced staying alive? I would be the only one. And I'm talking about on the floor of the ocean in the Matthias Abyss. So, just saying. I mean, how many people? I know that there's that Photoshop thing in regards to the various pictures of people who have been at the USS Vandenberg. That is a bad thing to show people, by the way, individuals who have done that, because you know that that is setting people up for failure to do that. That is reckless, pun intended, irresponsible, and wrong to do so. I understand photoshopping models in certain regards-ish. However, photoshopping scuba divers on the deck of the USS or USNS Vandenberg, that is a problem. Same thing when it comes to the Titanic. Doing that photoshopping stuff, that's not something you should be doing at all. Just a personal opinion on that regard. Because, you know, unlike certain individuals here, so this is my one of the trilogy of the scuba diving book series. That is the floor from where the Vandenberg area is. That is the floor where I landed at the bottom of the ocean. That is not photoshopped, because those who understand techie stuff understand that I cannot do that sort of stuff. I barely can figure out how to put a filter on the videos for YouTube. That's why all of my YouTube videos on my official channel are not edited. So as another example, for the floor area of where I was, that is the Vandenberg as I was surfacing from the bottom of the ocean. I landed below where that is. The camera I had for my underwater camera had a maximum of a 10 digital zoom, not a lens attachment. And for another example, because there was issues as far as the technology, because of it being the Bermuda Triangle, these two different areas, that would be the ground where these ships are, which is underneath on a different level of the ground from the USS/USNS Vandenberg, which means I was deeper than where the Vandenberg actually is, because these ships are in a different cliff area, I guess is the wording to use. Just for an understanding and comprehension. Oh, hold on. That is from a different ship than the Vandenberg. That is from one of the other ships when I was scuba diving that day. So for that clarification, so that way that is understood, here is one of the railings from the actual USS Vandenberg after those other ships when I was surfacing. So then there's that. And that part is when I had already landed at that bottom area, swam around those other ships, and then was on my way up past to be near the Vandenberg in the Florida Keys. So the individuals who have chosen to Photoshop that stuff, maybe, hypothetically speaking, when it comes to scuba diving, you probably should not do that. Hypothetically speaking. Just saying. So, in reference to after that dive, before I get into the other aspects, because it was the same year in reference to what occurred to my daughter at McCoy Elementary School, because the Vandenberg was in August 2009. My daughter was put into the district therapy in November 2009. I have had to do what I have had to do to maintain my health. See, I had a whole bunch of ulcers that had developed because of the medications I was prescribed at the time. And anytime I drank anything, when below the Mason-Dixon Line, mind you, that was not coffee, what occurred as far as juice this morning, as well as when, surfacing from the Vandenberg, which was the same sort of thing. The only difference is I didn't throw up like I did on the Vandenberg dive. However, pain levels, like I really need any more to my headaches and migraines? No, I do not. No, I need less pain. So, coffee does have health benefits despite certain individuals' thought processes of such. Not just for headaches and migraines, it actually does assist stomach issues. Anyway, above the Mason-Dixon line, though, I actually do have to drink tea because it is an opposite effect, where above the Mason-Dixon line in the United States of America, coffee makes my stomach feel the way juice does below the Mason-Dixon line, or tea does below the Mason-Dixon line. Above the Mason-Dixon line, I can drink tea. I can eat tea. I cannot do that below the Mason-Dixon line. The pain levels are far too great. Hypothetically, some could equate certain aspects in a societal aspect in comparison. I mean, just saying. I noticed, looking back real quick before going on, any day that I had coffee above the Mason-Dixon line when not doing my Medal of Honor art project, there were these situations that wound up occurring throughout the globe. I thought it was just a coinky dink back then. Even now, it's just kind of a coinky dink. However, I've noticed that since being below the Mason-Dixon line and having tea below the Mason-Dixon line when I don't have coffee in it, there seems to be some random explosion of issues. And obviously, I am not responsible for other people's choices and actions, but if there are individuals who are energy sensitive and maybe they don't realize it, and then tempers flare and that sort of thing, and not forgetting the ocean aspects, just saying, hypothetically speaking, it's also better for me to be in a better mood because I'm going to tie that together as I go on with the other aspects of what occurred in reference to my daughter. So in part one, I had brought up certain aspects in reference to what had occurred to my daughter being discriminated against because of how I look, as well as my background. So here is an example from August 2009 in reference, now August 2009, the beginning of the month is when I had gone to the Vandenberg. The school district started up in late August 2009 in Carrollton, Texas. So you can see that even Tammy Hatcher had stated there were issues. Now, she wasn't the kindergarten teacher. The kindergarten teacher had made notations as well. However, the description is the behavior, disruptive behaviors, rolling around on the floor, not following directions, talking about wizard, witches, and spells on people. We talked about her not being able to know the difference between fantasy and reality. The irony is, if they had asked me or even took a look at certain things when it came to my spiritual background. However, my daughter was watching Wizards of Waverly Place. And as many adults that do the live action role play, which I don't do, by the way, just gonna throw that out there. Maybe, just maybe, you should take a look at that in comparison before judging. And how is it that those individuals have less horrid treatment than my son, my daughter, and I in 2009, 2008, and so on, in regards to the school district of Carrollton Farmers Branch Independent School District in Carrollton, Texas. So I'm going to show you this particular document in the book, Finding a Silver Lining. The first portion is of my writing, and then there's the end of the book, which is also my writing, which gives different aspects of legal assistance to different aspects. Nonetheless, this middle fourth of the four-fifths of the book has the documentation. So there you go. That is what the school district therapist, Beth Warren, of Carrollton Farmers Branch Independent School District, had written in reference to one of the 7 district therapy appointments, which I was not told until the 7th appointment that that was the last appointment. And it took until 2011 before I was able to get this document, which I had requested so that way I would be able to get my daughter into therapy because of the way the healthcare system was at the time. So real quick, the school district thought it would be better to teach my daughter strategies for bullies. How about teaching bullies not to be bullies? How about that? Or next, in reference to Beth Warren, the date being December 7th, 2009, teach strategies for using words instead of hands. My daughter was the one who had people putting hands on her. How about you teach the other students to keep their hands to themselves instead of telling my daughter to use words when other students were using their hands. 3. Beth Warren wrote, discuss strategies for asking adults for attention. Well, she didn't have to ask for my attention, being her mom. However, how about the adults pay attention in the classroom and stop the bullies from being bullies, no matter whose child they are, instead of perpetuating that discrimination, hypothetically speaking. And so, as far as the commentary from Beth Warren, Lydia's behavior is improving at school as mom implemented consequences at home. I had already been taking care of my daughter and my son. I didn't need somebody to tell me how to be a parent. I was doing that all by myself quite well until my children went to McCoy Elementary School. And then it wasn't what was going on at home that was a problem. It was what was going on at McCoy Elementary School of Carrollton, Texas, of Carrollton Farmers Branch Independent School District. And at the very bottom, because that was the last appointment session for the district therapy, the Behavioral Family in Louisville, Salesmanship Club, North Point, and Journey of Hope Grief Counseling, that was when I was finally given some idea of where to go, because the doctor that I took my daughter to try to get a referral for her didn't have any suggestions. Just saying. And so I'm going to show one other. That is an email set from the school, printed out from them, because you see the CFBISD stamp at the bottom, of commentary about my daughter. Now, my daughter was put into University Behavioral Health in December of 2009. After the last appointment with the district therapy. because once again, Tammy Hatcher and other staff members, whether volunteer or not, including Angela Ryder, the guidance counselor, and Dawn Rink, the principal of McCoy Elementary School at that time, had continued to allow the perpetuation of my daughter being treated as such. And then when I would go in to speak with them, well, what about how you look? So going back to part one of this particular aspect, hey, maybe if the teachers and the staff of the school don't act the way they do in front of the children won't pick up those behaviors, hypothetically speaking. And again, the amount of self-control I had in comparison. Despite how I look. Now, and my background, by the way. Now, that time, in December 2009, would be the only time that my ex-in-laws went to go see my daughter in the treatment facility. They did not drive out there on their own. No. I had to drive with my son in the back seat from Carrollton, Texas to Fort Worth, Texas to pick up my ex-mother-in-law, to go to White Settlement from Fort Worth to get my ex-sister-in-law, Susie Marie Nichols Lopez, her two daughters and son, to then drive out to Denton, Texas, for them to visit with my daughter, because that was the only way they had the ability or time to. Then I had to drive from Denton, Texas, still with my son in the back of the car. Had school the next day. Tuesdays were the only days that you could visit when it came to the evening aspects. Thankfully, as a real quick pause, thankfully, the staff members at UBH Denton had worked with me and made it available for me to show up during the daytime, because of the fact that my son, who was in second or third grade at the time, was not able to go in the back because of the age restrictions. And so making sure that I was able to be there as much as I possibly could for my daughter while still being able to take care of my son as best as I could. I greatly appreciate to this day about how much Denton Behavioral Health, as well as the other healthcare facilities, did stuff to try to accommodate, despite my schedule, lack thereof realistically. However, because of my son, that was my schedule, to be able to be at the different appointments no matter what, and however much I had to drive to get to those appointments. And so after that one evening appointment, I then drove my ex-in-laws back to White Settlement to drop off because she drove her own car, but drop her off back at her house that she was renting in White Settlement, to then take my ex-mother-in-law back to her house in Fort Worth, Texas, to then go back to my house in Carrollton, Texas, to get my son ready for bed, tuck him in, do the story time, and then get him ready for school the next morning by myself. But hey, I didn't get a child's education degree. Dawn Rink, the principal of McCoy Elementary School at that time. Don't judge a book by its cover. That being said, and such, then my daughter was put into Lyons Healthcare Behavioral School, which I paid out of pocket because my insurance didn't pay for that. So that was $6,000. people that knew me at the time, they didn't understand what I was spending, like, to make sure my daughter and my son were taken care of. The money that I had gotten from my dead ex-husband, I had put into savings for their college, despite knowing, yes, I did have the ability to give them the education through the VA and all that sort of stuff. But I had also had other plans for that money for my son and my daughter. However, instead of being able to let it just continue to accrue interest, I had to spend it on the healthcare stuff that the insurance company didn't cover for my daughter. So, and my son, but mainly my daughter at that point. So by the UBH Denton time frame, my daughter should have been in the Tier 3 of the Texas Education Agency ARD IEP. In the district therapy, she should have been in Tier 2. However, those who I knew over the years who said that Texans don't discriminate against people, well, not true. Because while Don Rink was from Oklahoma, staff members and volunteers were from the state of Texas. I did not blame the entire state of Texas for what occurred to my daughter, my son, and I. However, those who knew about what was going on, who were reading what I wrote online and sat by and did nothing. What was that saying from way back when? Sit back and did nothing. And then what? My ex-in-laws, specifically Mary Evangelina Nichols Osteen and her daughters, did not ever reach out to me online. Never called me. Nothing. Though I have a feeling, I guesstimate, that they were watching on Facebook at minimum all the different postings that I did, and did nothing. Ever. So as time went on, after the Lions Behavioral Health School, which is now closed, by the way, then my daughter had to go back to UBH Denton, and then went back to finish the Lions Behavioral Health location, in which, when my daughter was first enrolled in there, McCoy Elementary School's principal Dawn Rink, guidance counselor Angela Ryder, and teacher for my daughter, Tammy Hatcher, or Tamara Hatcher, had all gone to the Lions Behavioral Health to make sure that I was being a good mom by doing what I needed to make sure my daughter was taken care of. They couldn't do their job, in my opinion. However, they needed to make sure that I was being a good mom. So, for all those teachers and guidance counselors, vice principals and principals, school districts and the like, if you have been dealing with parents, legal guardians, aunts and uncles, grandparents, who did not have the patience that I do and did, you can blame those people for that, however you choose to, of Carrollton Farmers Branch Independent School District and McCoy Elementary School, the 3 parents who lost my daughter on the Fort Worth school field trip, as well as the guidance counselor Angela Ryder for not putting my daughter through the IEP ARD, as well as the principal Dawn Rink for choosing not to do the same. and Tammy Hatcher, or Tamara Hatcher, and anyone that they were associated with for not doing what was correct, and in their own legal aspects for. Because as many individuals who could have read that online, well, before I put stuff into writing, in reference to my book, hypothetically, they could have prevented a lot of damage for all of you if they had done their jobs correctly. So here, some medical history as well. This one's from UBH Denton, saying that my daughter was her behavior was normal in comparison to what McCoy Elementary School was claiming. This is from McCoy Elementary School and their ratings. By the way, if you noticed on the notation earlier from Tammy Hatcher and Dawn Rink, they wrote in my name. They did not have my signature. For example, that in the corner right there, that's a signature of my initials. So, and then there's the aspects of this email where they didn't do a read or an ARD or an IEP. And by their own admission, at that time, which was over 2 years, because that's 2010. I've been asking for my daughter to be evaluated in 2008. So that's over 2 years that McCoy Elementary School did nothing at all whatsoever, except for cause more problems. These notations were taken by the Vice Principal McLaughlin during the meeting after the Fort Worth Zoo field trip. These are her handwritten notes, which discusses how McCoy Elementary School's Tammy Hatcher had called my daughter a toddler for being bullied some more by the students in her class instead of disciplining the other children. Because my daughter had, been upset. So now up to the point of regards to the Fort Worth school field trip, I had talked with Tammy Hatcher and I said, I think I need to go on the field trip. I usually, my ideal had been that 1 year I would go on my daughter's field trip, the next year I'd go on my son's field trip, the next year I'd go on my daughter's field trip, the next year son's field trip as a single mom. That way I could help and do what I could as far as I was concerned. The year before, when my daughter was in kindergarten, I'd gone on the field trip. And I had 5 children, including my daughter, to take care of. I didn't lose one. I didn't go with all of the other parents. I took the children where I took them, and they got to see all sorts of stuff. They got to go all sorts of places that the other students did not go. The other parents chose whichever path they chose. They all pretty much stayed together. And I looked at the map and I was like, what do you guys want to see? And I spoke with the children. And so we went pretty much everywhere except the other parents did. So, with their children. So we went to nowhere near them. That's what I can say. Where everybody went one way, I took the children in a different direction and again did not lose one child. From the second week in April, maybe during the first week, I had started asking Tammy Hatcher every single day, I really think that I need to go on the field trip, Miss Hatcher. will you please do the paperwork that will allow me to go on the field trip? I usually do this, but I want to, because of everything that's been going on where you're adult volunteers in the class, you, Angela Ryder, the guidance counselor, and the principal, Don Rank, at McCoy Elementary School here in Carrollton, Texas, obviously have your issues. I think it would be better if you would just make that alteration. So please, would you please reconsider allowing me to go on the field trip? And repeatedly, every day, from Monday through Friday, I was told, no, we don't need people like you distracting the students and the other parents. They don't need to see you and stuff like that. So, in reference of that tea, juice, and coffee aspect, ironically, I had actually started drinking tea at that time below the Mason-Dixon Line to try to calm my stomach down, because I knew that peppermint helps stomach issues. So if there was anything at all that occurred during the month of April in 2010 that was just no words to describe seeing that, you can either blame Tammy Hatcher, along with all that from McCoy Elementary School, and or my choice to try to drink tea only below the Mason-Dixon Line. That would be how I know that I can't have certain things unless it's a specific situation. However, if there was nothing that occurred that was explosive in any way beyond what occurred as far as my daughter and that situation, then obviously there's nothing to worry about, right? However, if there was something that occurred at that time in April of 2010, because there was the week before the field trip, Tammy Hatcher had said something to me, and I had gone home to my house in Carrollton, and I brewed up a cup of tea to try, because I was just so infuriated. It was so the field trip in April was the Wednesday of April in 2010, the last week. The week before that, I can't remember which day it was, my stomach was churning. I was infuriated. I was at the brink of rage. And so I tried to have some tea, because I was like, maybe that will help. I had my little tea kettle and stuff like that. It's like, okay, try to calm down. So that way, I can't go scuba diving right now because there's a whole bunch of stuff. And me not going scuba diving had nothing to do with what was going on in reference to my daughter. Me not going scuba diving had everything to do with when I landed at the bottom of the ocean. Everything to do with that. That was a personal aspect to make sure that I didn't put any of the scuba divers at risk, despite it being a lake and it being a limited depth. That was that. So, that being said, I have my tea and I brewed it up. Irony of that witch thing that the staff members accused in certain regards, a whole other ball of wax. And so if there was anything that occurred, I don't know, I wasn't paying nearly as much attention to the news at that time as I have since. So there have been bouts here and there where I've paid attention to news. At that time, I was not paying attention to the news at all. I was paying attention to what I needed to do for my children. So if there was anything like major, and I don't mean like, like and I don't mean to belittle things. I'm not saying that in a negative way in regards to if there was something that was just out of the blue, just completely unexpected, never happened in such a way where it just was all over the place. You can thank McCoy Elementary School for that. The individuals causing those problems, as well as hypothetically as a coinky dink of me drinking only tea in the state of Texas. Just saying. Just going to throw that out there. So, if there's an issue with me drinking some coffee with my tea to do what's best for my stomach, maybe, just maybe there should be some considerations made. Hypothetically. I mean, I know that I'm the only person who landed where I did in 3 different locations and surfaced safely. However, maybe, just maybe, certain things should be taken into consideration. Not, gonna be rude in that regard. I'm just gonna point that out as fact because there is the documentation I'm gonna guesstimate of such. I'm going to guesstimate that. I am. So, however that is viewed is however that is viewed. And that has absolutely nothing to do with the Mer people, by the way. That only has to do with me. That has absolutely nothing to do with the Mer people. Although that was a catalyst if hypothetically something happened. So here's some paperwork in reference to after in regards to what Carrollton Farmers Branch Independent School District and McCoy Elementary School had done. And so while there are those who know how to do fraudulent stuff with paperwork, I am not that type of person. I cannot tell a lie. And I refuse to. So that's all them. All them. So, yeah, okay, so the 28th of April, 2010, week before, maybe week and a half before, if there was any major issue, just out of the blue, maybe there's some things that should be reconsidered in certain regards. So here's, some more documentation from Carrollton Farmers Branch Independent School District. Their responses. I mean, I did sign the paperwork, however, in regards to the top, to, be able to keep in regards to that. So these are statements from the 3 adults who were in charge of my daughter at McCoy Elementary School during the Fort Worth Zoo field trip when they lost her at the Fort Worth Zoo. Mainly, they blame my daughter for, and that's a signature from Marcy Creemans, they blame my daughter for the medications that she was prescribed, not the fact that their children had been picking on my daughter, or the staff who wasn't doing anything correctly in that regard for my daughter. But then also, the fact that they weren't listening to me because, I look as I do. Now, my daughter was transferred from UBH Denton to Merrill Creek for a residential treatment center. And but she had not been out of either one. So how is it that according to these individuals from Carrollton Farmers Branch Independent School District that they could have done this evaluation? And isn't it weird that it says draft on the top, like they had falsified documents, but then they have, signatures pre-prepared. That's unacceptable. I mean, hypothetically, if that's, it is in writing, it is literally in black and white. And so, That's another set of paperwork from them at that time. Now, in May of 2010, I had gone to the Carrollton Farmers Branch Independent School District Board meeting to give a speech. See, Merridale, that would be the residential treatment center. And as you can see, the Dr. Jackson actually had brought up how she was quite amazed as to how much and how far I was willing to go to make sure my daughter was taken care of. And then there's the TEA aspect, Texas Education Agency, and Bobby Burns. Oh, so that, yeah. See, Bobby Burns. Let me, So there was the board meeting, and I went to the board meeting and I got to see Bobby Burns as well as the other board members for Carrollton Farmers Branch Independent School District. I had read up on how many minutes each parent had to be able to make a speech and stuff like that. You were supposed to get 3 minutes. I got 2, but I got through the majority of my speech. I didn't get all of it, but I got the majority of my speech. There's a video on my official YouTube channel. Now, before that time, they refused to say the Pledge of Allegiance and instead said the Our Father prayer, thinking, I guesstimate, that I would be so offended, not knowing that I'm a reverend, because I never asked, not knowing about how I was raised, going to church every week, multiple times a week, going to specifically Old Tenet Presbyterian Church, a minimum of 5 times, meaning 5 separate days out of a 7-day week. And so they didn't know all that. So when it was, oh, well, we're going to do the prayer. Oh, okay, you're still going to do the Pledge of Allegiance, right? No, that was their response. Now, later, I found out that they didn't put that particular video broadcast onto their website, but they had every other month for so many other years up on that website. And so there was a group of children my son got along with really well. Ironically, David and Tammy, not Tamara Hatcher, but Tammy, I can't remember their last name, but they were married and they had 2 boys together, and then Tammy had an older son. And I had told Tammy's older son, if you graduate high school, I will go to your graduation ceremony. I know you're having issues with David, and he's doing everything that he can to be a dad to you. You know he's not your dad. I'm not going to pretend like you're stupid or anything like that. And he's like, yeah. I'm like, okay. So I know you know he's not your dad. You know, however, because there was a big age gap difference between David and Tammy's sons compared to Tammy's eldest. Because David and Tammy's sons were in elementary school where Tammy's eldest was in high school. And I was like, I know you know David is not your dad. That is what it is. However, if you just get your high school graduation, like your diploma, I'll be there. I promise. I know you know what's going on in certain regards as far as my daughter, obviously, and then try to do as best as I can for my son. And he was like, yeah, I know. I said, so I'm going to make you this promise. You graduate high school, I will be there. I'm not going to make any promises for your biological father. I'm telling you, I will be there. So this was after the board meeting. I had no idea that Bobby Burns was going to be speaking at the graduation ceremony, which that was a lot of fun. I was very, very proud of Tammy's son. There's no denying that. I tried to do the pictures, but I kept having issues with the cap and gown. I had not seen that in such a large capacity. So that's probably cognitive issues, like right there in 2010. Nonetheless, there was a point in time when the superintendent, Bobby Burns, got up on the podium, and I'm like, I need to go walk. The equivalent of, I'm gonna look at the ceiling, or I'm gonna look directly in your eyes, Don Rank, the principal at the time. I was just gonna, because that is the safest for you. So, self-control. It's like, okay, I'm gonna go walk. And so I told Tammy and David, as well as my son, I'm gonna go walk like that way. And they were like, okay, I don't think they knew at that time what was going on. I'm gonna go walk. So I walked to the opposite end of that stadium, and I was just pacing back and forth at the very back, furthest away from the stage where Bobby Burns, the superintendent of Carrollton Farmers Branch Independent School District, was speaking. And I just kept walking back and forth and back and forth. It's just like, I am saving your life, and I don't think you actually deserve that at this point in time. I'm gonna look at the ceiling, and then like I'd hear a word he says, like, okay, I'm gonna just ceiling, and walk, and then I'd hear something, as I'm just gonna walk, walk. And so then, like, there were points where I grabbed onto the railing, and I'm like, ooh, that is a weak metal there. Okay, well, I'm just going to keep on walking. Because, I could bend that so easily right now, because that's so bad. That's so bad. You have no idea how much self-control I have. And so, as I'm pacing, it's one of those, and they run in the thing. And so I definitely could not look off to the side, because there were so many chairs that it was like, I know there are people who understand my thoughts right now, at least right now in 2020. It's like, I am saving your life right now. Walk. And then it's like, and then I look at, because he'd say something, and it's like, oh, there are so many empty chairs. Let me look at the ceiling. Oh, there's so much stuff on that stage. I better look at the ceiling. Breathe. Ooh. So in reference to the protests going on, rioting mainly in that regard, like, see how much self-control I had in that reference. Take that into consideration. All of the businesses are not responsible for, like, that sort of stuff. You blame for who is actually at fault. Not everybody. Yes, there are a few bad apples here and there, pun intended, because of the school aspect, right? However, you don't, chop down the entire apple tree just because of a few apples that aren't good or whatever. Just throwing that out there, so don't destroy every major city just because of a handful of individuals in an overall sort of way of the general group of. Find a way to genuinely advocate for change and stick to that plan. I didn't graduate college. I had gone to community college, but I had dropped out before my head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000. I graduated a semester early, and my biological mother forced that aspect. So, just because, yes, I do have the SCUBA certifications that I have. However, in regards to the college education thing, I do not have that. I obviously didn't graduate basic training. That's where the head injury on Palm Sunday happened. And despite everything that has gone on, as much as I have wanted to pick up some items and use them, I have done what I can to remain as calm as I possibly can, to use my words despite the other stuff going on. And so, you know, if I can do it, I know that there are a whole bunch of people that can go into specifics in far greater detail to genuinely reform and change things in a more positive way. There are different things that each person has to do for themselves, obviously. However, in such, that is a personal choice of how you allow things to impact you, whether you choose to only look at the negative or only look at the positive, or look at both and then try to bring everything together in a more positive way. So, you know, I'm going to continue on real quick because I know I'm getting long on time in this regard. However, here is the Texas Education Agency complaint in that regard, and the paperwork of, you can obviously pause the different aspects to be able to see that sort of stuff for the specifics. However, you know, look, special needs, yeah, I did try. However, they didn't do that. As far as McCoy Elementary School, I did try. August 2010, on the 9th, is how long compared to May of 2008? So, you know, it's not that I didn't attempt to. And then here's another docket you can look up. Guesstimate there are people who know how to do that and sort of stuff. And so, you know, I tried. They said that I wasn't good enough in certain regards. And so my signature has changed in regards to this, because when I wrote up my stuff, it was one of the, and then put these different documents in, I was like, I better work. And I had to work really hard at the changing of my signature, so that way it was not a ability to have that used it, because I had already found out about the identity theft. When I put the first two books together in 2013, it was, I already found out about the identity theft. So there was that. And so by the way, my request was well before June 1st of 2011. I had been making requests by fax and email since 2010 in that regard. So here are certain aspects of various stuff that you can look at. And, you know, it's not that I didn't do everything I possibly could. I tried everything to get things taken care of. However, it was not up to me fully. It was up to all the other individuals that were involved specifically. And instead, I mean, there were people who were genuinely helpful. I didn't deny that then. I don't deny that now. However, in regards to the various aspects of everything that I tried to get squared away, people did not want to, you know, they did not want to accept that I was doing everything I could. My son and my daughter, they knew at those times I was doing everything I possibly could. it realistically was the individuals at McCoy Elementary School of Carrollton Farmers Branch Independent School District. Now, in reference to this email set, this is email correspondence between the Fort Worth Police Department and I because of various aspects, because I understood that the Fort Worth Zoo area was different than Carrollton Farmers Branch Independent School District. And so the Fort Worth Zoo individuals and the Fort Worth Police Department, you know, that district line stuff all across the aspect, it was like, okay, it's not that I haven't been trying, because, you know, I tried going to the Carrollton branch of the police department, and they told me that they couldn't help me because of it happening in the Fort Worth Zoo. So it's Fort Worth, Texas aspect of taking care of. And so, you know, and that would be when I contacted the Fort Worth Police Department. And in reference to the aspects of the value options, you know, I had told people my daughter was being denied certain treatments, and I had received a form that I had filled out and sent back to TRICARE to give them what was going on. And I had a feeling that maybe I'd be lucky enough that somebody from, I mean, these are subgroups of TRICARE at that time, but that somebody from their group would see, like, hey, it's not that I'm not getting you the information, but, you know, I did fill out the form, I sent the form in, and I was hoping that there'd be people that could see that and be like, okay, like, form was filled out, sent in, no problem, here's all that stuff. And then, you know, my daughter was, you know, given certain limitations because of the aspects of the maximum and such. And so, in closing, before I go on to the part 3 of this, and by technicalities, a lot shorter time frame than the years of, as well as putting everything together. There were people who just did not want to believe. And, you know, the aspects of the amount of individuals that just, there were some who did, and there were those who did not. And, you know, the people I knew in person that actually, like, knew I was telling the truth, it was so small at those times and stuff. And, you know, I was dealing with what I was dealing with. And so in reference to the current events of I believe in peaceful protesting. It's the rioting I don't agree with. I understand fury and rage. Oh, believe me. I know that. But taking that fury and rage to find a better way for not just that one particular situation, but for genuine aspects that needs to be taken into consideration. How, well, it's up to each individual how they do so within their own means and measures. And so, despite everything that I was dealing with at that time, not just the SCUBA dive, after effects at all, obviously. However, I did not feel the need to discuss with non-scuba divers stuff that they wouldn't have understood anyway. And they did know I scuba dove. They did know that. And that was actually a part of an additional aspect in regards to McCoy Elementary School and in specific, the staff members of, like, Principal Don Rink and Tamara Hatcher, the teacher, and the guidance counselor, Angela Ryder, as well as some of the adults that volunteered. That was another aspect that they had against me because, not only do you look like, verbatim, not only do you look like you do, and not only do you have that military background, but you scuba dive too? Ugh, what type of mom are you? See how much self-control I had even back then to not lose it at those points. You guys have a good one. Comment, like, share, and subscribe to my official YouTube channel. Go to my website, www.susanmeeling.com. You can see a bunch of stuff that I've done. And there are links for you to purchase the different books and my journal blog entry, the Ornery PSA, that I've written a few journal blog entries. Have a good one.